Hey, what's up guys, Alex here, and today I want to talk about chords, or what they are and how to build interesting chord progressions. So this video is going to be in two parts. The first part is just going to be an introduction to chords for those who do not even know what chords are. And no shame, I definitely started making music without even knowing what chords were. So we've all been there. And the second part is for those of you who do know what chords are and do know how to write chord progressions, but maybe get stuck into writing the same type of chord progressions all the time. And this can happen because of muscle memory. If you're writing chord progressions by jamming on your instrument, like your brain is going to make your fingers go on the same positions all the time and play the same keys all the time. So if you're the guy who is stuck writing the same chord progression all the time, or if you're just paralyzed by your music theory knowledge and do not know how to write chord progression because you're like, oh my god, I have so many choices, this is going to help you. And it's also going to help you if you do not know how to play an instrument, to write chords, or if you do not know music theory, because this technique is really basic. And I may not even be the first guy who used it, because I mean, I discovered it myself, but I think it's really intuitive. So the technique is basically writing the chord progression voice by voice. Anyway, I'm going to start this tutorial by explaining you what chords are. And if you already know that type of stuff, you can skip to the middle part of the video where I show the method to write interesting chords without getting stuck. Let's start by understanding what chords are. So let's take, for example, this. This is what you will call the C major chord, and chords, in my understanding, which is very basic and not academic at all, because I haven't studied music theory in a detailed way and I just write music by ear. In my understanding, chords are a group of notes that, if played together, convey a certain feeling or certain mood or certain message. And chords are made with a certain logic. You cannot make a chord just by, putting together random notes like this. Because this is really unpleasant and has no logic at all, I think. So let's start by understanding, what's the logic behind chords. Why does this sound bright and this sounds dark and this sounds jazzy and stuff? So basically, when you play a chord, you're playing notes that are distanced between each other. So let's take, for example, the C major chord. You see the C, the E, and the G. And between the C and the E, there are 3 spaces. And between the E and the G, there are 2 spaces. The number of spaces between one note and another determine their sound, determine how they sound if they are played together. And these spaces are called intervals. And each interval has a certain name, depending on the first note and the second. So let's take the C5 note, for example. The space between the C5 and another C5 is called unison. The space between C5 and C sharp 5 is called minor second. Like this interval is the minor second. D is the major second. D sharp is the minor third, major third. This is called perfect fourth. And if you notice, the minor intervals have a darker sound, while the major intervals have a sort of bright sound. Then there is this. This is the minor fifth, I think, or major fourth, or maybe both. This is called the perfect fifth, minor sixth, major sixth, minor seventh, major seventh, and this is called the octave. So these are the intervals. So now that you know what intervals are, you can start to understand how chords are built and the logic between, or rather, the logic behind them. So let's take, for example, the chord I showed you before. This is a major chord and it's a major triad. triad because it only uses 3 notes. We could also, you know, have this chord here, which is not a triad because it uses more than 3 notes. Like, you can build chords with 11 notes if you want, like, but now I'm going to show you the 4 main triads, the 4 main types of triads. So this is a major, and we call it a major because from the root note, which is C, you have a major third, like from C to E, it's a major third, the interval, and then from the second note of the chord, you have a minor third, so E to G. Major, third, minor third, and when put together, they sound like this. This is the sound of the major chord, and if we transpose it, it has the same sound, because like the space, the interval between the notes is still the same. If you want to change the mood of this C chord, you will have to change, you know, the intervals between the notes. So let's make this chord sad. There. So what I did here, this is the minor chord, and it's basically the same concept as the major chord, but how to say, reversed. So we have a minor third here and a major third on top of it, and this is a minor chord. Then there is the augmented chord, which is a major third and another major third on top of it, so 3 spaces and 3 spaces. Sounds like this. And the diminished chord, which is minor third and minor third, 2 spaces and 2 spaces. So these are the basic types of triads, and then if you want to make something more special or interesting, we can add a major 7th to a chord, or a minor 7th. So there are more advanced type of chords for sure, and these were just the basics one. But now that you have that understanding of how a chord is built and how they work and why they work in that way, let's start looking at my method I use to write interesting chord progressions. Okay, so the first thing you do is you pick a scale. Like, normally you will pick a scale, and let's take this for example. I think this is the C minor scale, and so yeah, we're only going to use notes within this scale here. And if you are not, if you do not know music theory, you do not know scales and stuff, a cool thing you can do with FL Studio is go on the helpers and go on scale highlighting, pick your scale. So I'm going to pick C sharp. What's the name for the minor scale? I think Aeolian, maybe. Let's see. Then you you click on note grid highlights, and what it's going to do, it's going to, like, the piano roll is going to highlight the notes which belong to the scale you selected. So, like, if you do not know scales, you can have the grid help you in such a way so that you know what keys are inside the scale and what keys are not. So now that we have this grid set up this way, we can start writing the chord progression without making horrible mistakes. Keep in mind though that if you're more expert, like, you do not need this grid, because sometimes going outside of the scale can lead to interesting places and can also, like, help you into making some key changes or modulations inside your track. And those things, if done right, are amazing. But if you're a beginner, I suggest you to just play inside the scale you chose for your track. So now that we have our scale, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a chord progression with 4 voices. So what I do is I start by, writing down the bass voice, which is the lowest one. So let's start. So I write like all the notes of this voice. Okay, so now that we got that bass voice handled, let's write another voice on top of it, like on the same scale, and like we need to build upon, but it doesn't need to be the same, you know? Otherwise we would only have, you know, octaves going on like this. Which is uninteresting. It's not a chord, it's a melody. Like we want something different on top of this, so I'm going to add something different. As you can see, like it follows the same, you know, how to say, direction of the bass voice, but in some parts I made it go up instead of down. Like here it goes down like the bass, goes down like the bass, goes down like the bass, and here the bass goes down, and here instead this voice goes up. But it's notice it's the same F sharp note. Anyway, let's write another voice on top of this. The melody of the third voice is even more independent and adds a grade of richness on top of everything we've wrote so far. So let's check them out. And if you do not know, like this, if you do not like the sound of a certain part, you can also change it anytime. So I'm not really convinced by this. So I'll do this instead. Another cool thing if you write voice independently is that you are more inclined to make them, you know, follow different, like treat each voice independently and make it follow its own rhythm. So here we have two notes instead of one alone. And that also can add a degree of richness to your chord progression. So now that we have these three voices, I want to add a last voice, and this last voice is going to be the highest, and the highest voice is usually the voice that has the more distinguishable melody. So I'm going to write a melodic fourth voice on top of everything. So let's add this highest melodic voice. was okay. It's not the best ever chord progression I ever wrote, but it was cool, I think. So this is a technique you can use to write chord progression. Now that you have the basics, so let's do that, I guess. I usually don't add many variations to the bass voice because it's the foundation of the whole chord progression. So I want that voice to be clear and constant and bold and stuff. So I do not add many variations there. But let's add some to the second voice, maybe. You need to be careful with this because if you add too many, maybe it's going to sound a little bit too forced. But yeah, I hope it will sound okay in the end. So let's check it out now. Sorry. I want to apply some changes in here as well. This can be a pretty tedious process, actually, but it pays off. Alright, I like this. But yeah, one thing I have to make a remark about is that using this method is kind of slow, if like it's slower than just coming up with an interesting chord progression by playing it on the MIDI keyboard. But since there is no muscle memory involved in here, like you're just inputting the melodies you hear inside your head into the computer, your brain is much more stimulated and doesn't work automatically, but thinks about what you're inputting into your DAW or your piano roll. So that is really interesting because again, if you're used to writing chord progressions on your instrument by jamming on your instrument, 50% of your brain might be doing that automatically with muscle memory. So using this technique can lead you to interesting places, and it can help you if you're not used to coming up with chord progressions on instruments as well, because it helps you subsize every single voice, so it's less daunting to come up with the chord progression because you just have to do it step by step, voice by voice, and you can keep track of what is happening because you hear the distinctive melodies that each voice has, so it's easier for you to follow. after you build your chord progression in such a way, you have basically the main image of your track, the main mood, and you can, like, you could even write a whole 2 minute track on a single chord progression like this one, like I showed in the orchestration tutorial, which I released last week, I think, or like I did in my track Through the Maelstrom. Like, it was based on a single chord progression, but you can even come up with many different chord progressions and use a chord progression for a part of your track and another part of your track, so you divide your track in many different acts and it sounds even more rich. But yeah, this is how you can come up with interesting chord progressions. I hope this tutorial helped you, and yeah, if you want to learn more, go check out the other tutorials I made on this channel, and stay tuned and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, because I'm releasing, this more and more often now. And yeah, yesterday was Thanksgiving, and while we don't celebrate that in Italy, I have to thank you guys for the 2,000 subscribers we reached exactly like this week, and it's been amazing, and the support here is overwhelming, so I want to thank you guys very much. And yeah, if you want to learn more, I offer private lessons on my website, which you can find in the description, and I also recommend you to check out the Evenant courses, which are made from my friends at Evenant, about, they explain how to write cinematic trailer music, and, the business of music licensing is another course they just released. By the way, Evenant is also having a 30% sale of their courses because of the Black Friday these days, so definitely go check out the Evenant courses. Link is in my description of this video here, and I hope you learned something new today. And if you have any questions about this or any corrections you would like to make, because it's very likely that I may have made some mistakes, definitely write that down in the comments so we can all learn together and, raise our skills, musically speaking. And because that's all this channel is about in the end. So, yeah, I hope you learned something new, and Alex out.